In the world of Hollywood, movies get greenlit and redlit. They get remade and rebooted. But we are the ideal. I'm Sam Gasch, and you are listening to Ideal Remake. Thank you for listening to Ideal Remake. We take movies that either have been, will be, or should be remade and talk about what the ideal version of that remake would be. Hello? We're making a podcast, and we're doing it on purpose! Huh. Oh well. So, Daniel, is Last Action Hero a movie that has been, will be, or should be remade?
Sam, I think Last Action Hero has not yet been remade. Lots of inspiration has came from it, but it definitely should be remade.
Cool.
And if it did get remade, it would hopefully involve a lot of new tech or ways to get it so it can be remade right, and the details on the right we can definitely talk about.
Yeah. So before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself so the audience knows who's talking?
Oh, well, my name's Daniel Oliveira. I am a movie watcher, a critic of, I guess, food in Los Angeles, and a dog owner, and a Instagram mini influencer.
So then I guess the important follow-up question is, what kind of dog? Tell us about your dog. Where can we see pictures of the dog?
Yes, I would definitely consider myself a dog dad. I have one dog in particular. Her name's Indiana. And you can see pictures of her along with other dog dads on my Instagram, Dog Dads. It's just that simple. And I tend to host and post pictures of other people's dogs and their lives. And especially now, we're spending so much time at home, and our dogs don't know why, but they're loving it.
Heck yeah, they are. All right, cool. So then let's talk about Last Action Hero. When did you first see this movie?
I've realized that the first time I actually really saw it was about a week ago, because I had such vivid memories from this movie, and I had no idea from when I can pinpoint those memories, and it's mainly just because this movie, his main character is an action hero that's played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. That is also there's a lot of satire about Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it evolves his life so much that you can really just blend Arnold Schwarzenegger with this movie. Like if this movie was a autobiography, it would be of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
So wait, you hadn't seen this movie all the way through prior to recommending it?
Right. I've
Wow.
had such vivid memories and understanding of the movie, and I was totally in disbelief that I've seen it. I would watch it. I would probably watch parts of it because it was on regular cable at the time. And
Oh, okay. So it's not that you hadn't seen it; it's that you'd only seen it bits and pieces, like in chunks.
yeah,
This is the first time you'd sat down to watch it all the way through.
Exacto. I
Got
can't
it,
tell
got it,
you a
got it, got
day where I was 11 and I just sat down and I watched the movie from A to B, like all the way to the ending. Like, but it was still as impactful to me. I would think even more so than because I didn't. So I've always had these super vivid memories, and I would reference it, and then like people would ask from where I'm referencing this from, and I was like, it's that one movie where the kid goes into the theater, and then he gets sucked into this action movie, and then they would be like, oh, you mean Last Action Hero? And I'm like, yeah, that's the one. So it was always lingering in my mind, especially the scene where the villain of the movie, who was great,
Charles
played
Dance.
Yes, Charles Dance. Yes, he was like impeccably such a good villain.
Yeah, he's amazing.
And
Like,
he go on.
So I had never seen this movie before. I actually, when you recommended it, thought it was the one where Arnold Schwarzenegger plays an action figure that comes to life. which is a separate Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. So I sat down having no idea what I was getting myself into. And when we eventually got to the scene where we were first introduced to Benedict, the Charles Dance character, I was like, oh my god, is that Charles Dance? Oh, this is gonna be a good movie now!
Oh yes, that's exactly how I felt when I rewatched it too. I was like, that's the guy from Game of Thrones. And
Yeah.
he is like playing almost the same character where he's just like this like super focused bad guy and you're like, "Oh man, this is going to be man, you don't know what this guy's going to do. He seems like a true villain." And I've never seen him play a villain before Game of Thrones since.
Oh,
And
I have.
man, he's
He's
good.
actually he's actually had a pretty impressive career. I think he's in one of the James Bond movies. I'm not sure which one. And like I watch a lot of like British panel shows and other things like that are like, hey, here's these British people. And Charles Dance has been on, and he is just such a charming ass motherfucker that it's like, I mean, I get why you get cast as villains all the time, but like, you're also really funny. Like, you know what's going on. So it makes him perfect casting for this movie, if we're being honest, just because he knows the movie he's in and totally gets it, which is one of the amazing things about this movie is that just about everyone who's in this movie gets it.
Hmm. That's perfect casting. I think that's the ideal. That's why it's so hard to critique this movie and you even suggest a remake because the only reasonable way to do it is if you get these same actors and just using maybe
Well,
like DH technology because
absolutely not.
be-
But
because it's he was a perfect cast actor. Uh, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was a perfect cast actor. I think you can kind of play around with all the other characters, but I feel like those guys, dang, they really did. They're perfectly casted. They knew what they were doing.
I mean, the when this movie came out, which I should have pulled up the IMDb Pro page first. One moment, please.
It came out in 1993.
Yeah, so this movie comes out like just as the decline of these ridiculously huge. Oh, I did have the duh. Just like as like the big budget huge 80s movie thing is kind of slowly diminishing. And like this movie is a box office failure. And like a massive box office well, not massive, but it's a failure. And it's a shame because it basically takes all of these 80s tropes and makes fun of them. Like the movie opens with them watching Arnold Schwarzenegger's version of Hamlet.
Hmm.
And oh my god, it's ridiculous. Like I turned to my friend Caitlin who I watched the movie with and we were both like, I would also watch this version of Hamlet.
The fact that they're able to make fun of their own genre to this absurdity didn't became a trope in movies until recently when like the Jane Franco movies was like came out. It was just like this was way before its time, and
Oh,
I
I
think that's why when people rewatch it now, they're like, "Oh my God, this movie! How come I
I mean,
didn't watch?"
I think we can all agree that it was a little bit before its time. But I'm also just now realizing in this moment that this is a Shane Black movie, so of course it's zippy and metatextual.
It came out. Well, it came out after Naked Gun because Naked Gun came out in 1988, but it did had a lot of that kind of comedy where it was like this the intro scene where you meet where he gets sucked into the theater when he's watching the new Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. He's going to be the first one to see it before anybody else, and it automatically starts with him running away from or he was starting to chase the bad guys. Oh, and just the beginning scene where he keeps on referencing that it's his second cousin.
Yeah, oh my god. No, no, not his
He's my
second cousin.
favorite.
Yeah, my favorite second cousin.
He's chasing the bad guys because they killed his favorite second cousin. And
Oh
then the
my
kid
god.
gets sucked into to the movie to escape from a grenade that gets tossed into his theater. I think it was a grenade,
I think it was
and
a grenade.
and then he ends up in the trunk or in the back seat of Arnold's car in the getaway scene, and you just see all these highways and roads from Los Angeles, which is also another huge part why I'm a big fan of this movie. It's very even when they go back to New York at the end of the film, I think it was shot in downtown LA just
Probably.
just to like save on production costs. And he
Well,
just
because this was an expensive movie, like an expensive movie, and I'm sure part of it was because like they got so many celebrities,
truly.
like just
uh,
the appearance fees of all these people. I'm sure was through the roof.
but I think it's also just like I mean, I can't say for sure, but I think all the stunts that the first scene that I was referring to is like he just cuts off the bridge and jumps into the Los Angeles river. Like it's just them making fun of all the like action movie tropes, and that was like one of the first ones where everybody goes into the LA River and drives, and then you get these scenes that you're just like, well, that was unexpected. If you
Yeah, I literally made the joke of, oh hey, it's the car racing location from Greece.
exactly,
It's
it's
been the
almost the
same
same.
racing for forever. But so we commented about how well the cast works. The one person in the cast who really doesn't work, unfortunately, is the kid. Poor
Hmm.
Danny. He tries so hard, but he just isn't quite there.
You know,
But the
you feel some sympathy for him because that scene where his house gets broken into, he gets like roughed over by that thug that tries to break into his house to steal some money. It had this like Joker, the modern Joker with Joaquin Phoenix vibe, where it's like this time where it's not very safe in the streets, and you feel bad for the kid, but it's almost like if I were to remake it, I would suggest like if he was a little bit older. But what were you saying about Go on. Sorry.
what I was saying is that the kid is obviously trying very hard, but it doesn't quite work. I was going to say it's a crazy coincidence because this kid, I actually recognized him because the first episode of the current season of Ideal Remake, we talked about a movie called Pet Shop.
Hmm.
And Pet Shop, the production company that made Pet Shop, also made another movie called Prehysteria, which was probably their larger of the two movies, and that movie is starring this kid.
So this kid was kind of like a child actor, and he kind of just didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, like, he was a child actor who, I mean, he's been in things, had a couple things in Bones, he's did stuff up until, like, 2015, but only sporadically. I'm guessing it's more that, like, he just fell out of love with it, because he was a kid. It's like, if you're a kid and you're a child actor, sometimes you just don't love the thing you're doing.
I think
But
that.
anyway, the kid's name is Austin O'Brien.
Mm, okay. And
But
he had all the tools in his belt. Like he was the design for the outfits, it was very spot on to the era. Like, very late 80s, like early 90s. Just like everything about how the set design was, it felt like the Joker felt, when you with this like you kind of
oh,
feel this like
I did not
dirtiness.
watch the Joker, and I'm not interested in watching the Joker.
You get this dirtiness that you just like you don't really see in most movies, where it's like you understand that it's a bad neighborhood just because it feels a little bit grimy, a little bit dangerous. And I think that's just I think maybe that really helped set the tone of the movie, where this kid is already in a rough neighborhood. So
Yeah, I mean, clearly there's graffiti all over the movie theater. I mean, they're definitely setting it up as this is a kid who needs escapism. Like, it is a 80s movie style bad neighborhood, to the point where, like, I'm sure there are neighborhoods like that, but like I've been in some rough neighborhoods before, but they're never quite movie level bad. So, like, you start from that place, and then it's just, you just heighten it like crazy. But in terms of our remake, I feel like, because I want to talk about how to do this, but I feel like it's all centered around who the lead is that we recast.
Truly.
So I want to do that recasting, and then we can actually talk about our plot, because the movie as it is now it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie about an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Well said. Exactly. And even within the movie, when they were making fun of Arnold Schwarzenegger, they went into a Blockbuster, like a video store, and the Terminator within the movie was played by what was it? Sylvester Stallone.
Which was amazing. Ah, that inside, like, they have so many inside, like, I get why this doesn't work necessarily as well outside of Los Angeles, but there's so many, like, inside baseball jokes and inside Hollywood jokes that it is delightful. So
Truly. So the main character has to have, it almost has to be a character that makes fun of himself. And I was thinking about this. And what do you think about this suggestion? You let me know. What do you think about Dwayne Johnson?
yeah, I mean, that's the obvious pick. It's the only person who could possibly do this.
And it's just because he's already done movies similar to this, like Jumanji, where it kind of explores this escapism of a video game, and but it doesn't do it in the way that it's exploring him as an actor.
Right. So
So I
there's a couple of different things
mhm.
that we need to talk about, because first of all, The Last Action Hero as it was is such a time capsule that it's difficult to remake, because there's never going to be like a movie star to the level of Arnold Schwarzenegger that was Arnold Schwarzenegger, because he was in just about every movie, like every action movie, and was like the guy. And the only person who could do that now is The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. But even still, he kind of has that level of recognition that we see now. But it's never going to be quite the same. But the only person who comes close is The Rock. But I feel like as a society, we've become a little bit more conscious of like the contracts and the scripts and everything, that I feel like we can have fun with a lot of like his life, because this was just making fun of Schwarzenegger movies. I feel like this could make fun of both The Rock, like Dwayne Johnson movies, and The Rock.
His career.
Yeah.
Because the
And
first movie he was in was that John Travolta movie, right? Where he played the bodyguard, and he was absolutely terrible as an actor. And
was
now
he? I don't know.
he was terrible, but in his defense, he was playing a bad actor. So it kind of like gave him the flexibility to be bad. So he was bad, but it just he evolved
So
so much from then to now, where he's his most recent movie that I've watched and like him in was Jumanji, where he was able to make a lot of fun of himself, of being this serious action actor person. So yeah, if that could, he's the ideal candidate for a remake. Yeah.
yeah, I literally don't think it would work with anyone else. Like, the first person I thought was maybe Jason Statham, but no, it has to be The Rock. And I feel like, so one of the things that people kind of know about The Rock is that in his modern movies, he is contractually obligated that he can never lose a fight. And I feel like, no, I'm 100% serious. And I feel like that's the sort of thing that we have to kind of make fun of. Like, all those sorts of things. We have to talk about where he came from, where he went. So I just saw one of The Rock's earlier movies also, actually with the same friend. And we saw Pain and Gain, which is a Mark Wahlberg, The Rock. It turns out it's a Michael Bay movie, which we had no idea, but it's based on this true story out of Florida. It's like it's the ultimate Florida man movie, and it's amazing. Like, if you enjoy Last Action Hero, you have to watch Pain and Gain, because it's ridiculous. But The Rock is in it, and he's playing this guy who's just not that smart, and oh my god, it's amazing. But I kind of want to get span the gamut of starting from where he plays someone who's not that great, kind of an idiot, to like an ultimate Mary Sue, essentially.
Hmm.
Like if anyone's a Mary Sue in his movies, it's The Rock.
Yeah, he's followed the same footsteps as Schwarzenegger also. They're very similar in terms of just like career paths. I can see that, except I don't see The Rock becoming governor of California anytime soon.
It could happen.
But he
I
could if he wanted
if
to.
he ran, people would vote for him,
I,
and
no doubt.
if anything, he would become like the president in Idiocracy
President Chamacho.
or whatever his name was. Yeah, and like that sort of thing. And yeah, so like that's kind of the energy that I want to take into this. Like I kind of want to play around with that idea. So like we take kind of the Rock movies, but I want him to be this character. I want the Jack Slater in this movie to be someone who never loses. And then when they do eventually come to the real world, I want it to be something where he loses a fight and he's like, I don't understand. I punched you and then you punched me back. It's like in Dr. Horrible when the Nathan Fillion character is like, this is pain. This must be what pain is like. And just like has this complete breakdown because he was never prepared to handle that sort of thing.
I think that would be definitely interesting to watch. And
like I
but
think we need to spend
of
more time in the real world because of that. Because we get the tropes inside the last action hero world, but what I think is really fun is when we like come out of that and we figure out that we can break free.
he
Like
becomes like humanized. He's like he realized that his life has just been this cycle of pain and action and just like nonstop. And he's like, well, it's nice to just I've never talked to a woman before. So he spends all night talking to his mom.
and she's into it. And we assume that yes, they definitely just talked, nothing else.
But in terms of if you had to keep any characters that are currently, would you
Well,
want
I
to
have
do the Hamlet storyline
no.
again and
In
keep
terms of
Ian McKellen as
Ian,
Death?
Ian McKellen,
Ian McKellen.
we're not doing casting yet, but generally when we do casting, like I cast kind of like the core main people who are necessary to the plot. Like one of the sequences that I would cut is while it was a ridiculous Arnold Schwarzenegger moment when he's getting the guy laced with explosives out of the funeral. Like that was super fun, but like if we could trade that in for spending more time in the real world, I probably would.
So are you referring to the funeral scene where it's like this Italian mob and he has to get him out?
Yeah, because the guy's full of explosives.
It wasn't
Or nerve
explosive. It
gas.
was nerve
Nerve gas.
gas.
Yeah,
And
nerve
the
gas.
realization of, oh yeah, that's why they bought so much nerve gas.
Yeah. Like yeah, I mean like do things like that. It's so like I have my cast and we'll get to that in a minute, but just in terms of like general plot, I want to kind of play around with like the kind of idea of it. Like I'd like to have a car chase sequence in the movie, and they kind of toy with this a little bit when when they're playing chicken. Like they're playing chicken in the movie and Jack Slater always wins. But in our version, I would say we got to have a ridiculous car chase because The Rock is now associated with the Fast and Furious franchise.
True.
And so we have this ridiculous car chase where he's pulling off these ridiculous stunts and everything. And then I want him to try to do that in the real world and just get into a massive car accident.
I would like to see that, but not only a massive car accident, I just want it to end in like 2 minutes. I want him to do a sharp turn into a street that he's used to do in the movies, you know, how all cars do, but instead of just missing the other car because they don't stop, and then there's an accident. And then you can save that airbag trope, saying like, well, you know, this is a sedan, it had an airbag. That is, I don't know what car they would use, maybe like a Mustang or something, a classic Mustang, that'd be like that car didn't have airbags. Like you could probably save that scene somehow so The Rock can survive this car accident.
Well, what you're doing is if you put him in like a muscle power car inside the movie, once he gets to the real world, he's on the streets of Los Angeles or
Mm-hmm.
potentially on the streets of Los Angeles. It could be New York, whichever. And I mean, if you're going to do a crazy muscle car in the movie, you're going to have him driving either a Prius or a Fiat in the real world.
And just like have that experience of like flooring it and still not going anywhere.
Yeah, and it's just not. And like he's like in the movie, he'll do these like crazy zipline like stunt driving around all these other cars. But I like the idea of what you said of him kind of like nicking and banging into the cars along the way. He's like, why are they not getting out of my way? It's like because this is the real world. It's not. That doesn't work like this. You have to stop. You're gonna kill us all.
No, the police are on their way as we speak.
Uh,
Oh
but yeah,
yeah. Speaking of the police, and the when our Charles Dance, the Benedict character, comes into the real world, and he comes out, and the neighborhood that he comes out of is this again like grimy, super bad era where there was a lot of the drug war that was going on, and
yeah. It's
so he
1993.
so he
This is height
kills
of
he
L.A.
literally kills
riots.
somebody uh just to understand. I love that this character is kind of more of a like methodical, like understanding the rules first before taking action. So he just goes and kills a guy, and he literally shouts to the world, I have murdered a person.
Yeah,
And nobody
that
says or calls the police. There's just no reaction, and he's
yeah.
just
That's the
looking
that's
at
the
his clock, waiting for the police to arrive, because in the movie world, the police would be there instantly.
Yep,
But
that's the
that's
reference I made in the opening of this very episode.
so it's almost like a contrast where in the movie he was expected to get arrested, but now he's out in the real world and he's
And
literally confessing to a crime and he's not being arrested.
well, it's also such a catharsis for the villain character where he says like in this world the bad guy can win.
And
And it's just
that's
like
what I would like to see way more of.
yeah, it's like it's this amazing thing of like I'm a bad guy because this is who I am as a person. It's not like I can go escape and live my life. It's no no no. I enjoy being a bad guy, but like the realization that I might actually succeed is amazing because in the movie he's kind of like working for the Vivaldi character just because like it's what his character does. But then when he realizes that he could potentially do something else, it's so freeing because it's a person who is really bad but is in shackles because of the world, like the nature of the world they live in. When all of a
hmm
sudden those shackles come off, they're all of a sudden so much more evil, and I found that fascinating.
he liberated himself, and I think that's kind of where the movie kind of went out of control, kind of like spiraled out of control, where they he understood the power that he had. He wasn't just like a villain; he became a super villain at that point, where he had not just the normal power of a human being to kill somebody, but also this power to transition between realities. So it became way out there when they introduced the idea that this isn't the only movie that he can go back into. It's not the only action movie that he can go back into, and they explore this a little bit in the film where he was threatening at the end to be like, I can go get Frankenstein, I can go get Dracula, I can get anybody I want to help me fight, and it just it makes it very obscure to the fact that like it's really up to your imagination to control the world based on this movie. So, but when he says that, it just means that in his reality of the movie that he came from, all these characters already existed, or did he find out about this character when he came into the real world, the new reality, and he just like sat through a bunch of movies and be like, "Oh man, these guys are really good bad guys. I think they can help me out."
I mean, we already know that in their world, movies exist just because Terminator existed in their movie with
That's a good point.
Sylvester Stallone. So it's not like he's coming in from a world where movies don't exist. What I found interesting is that it is kind of like the ramifications of what he was going to do. Like, I loved that he was like, because I liked when he pulled the whatever the name of the bad guy was from the first Jack Slater movie, the one who killed Jack Slater's son.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, the
that
Ripper or something.
right or whatever. Because like even in our world, all of these characters still felt like they had to go through the motions as they were written. There's a lot of good books, and former guest of the show Danny Bell is an author of these sorts of books where you go into the story and you take these people out of the story. They still have to kind of function as they were written. Like, they have to, like, this is the kind of essence of who they are as a person, and they still have to go through the motions. So when Jack Slater is facing off against the Ripper again, they're going through the same motions because that's just who they are.
Hmm.
And when they finally get Jack Slater back into his movie after he's been like very, very hurt, it's like they get him back in, and it's like, oh well, in this world that's barely a scratch. Why is he even here?
Just a scratch.
Yeah, those are the processes that define like their essence as characters, because that's what they are. They're not a fully fleshed out human being. They're a character, and that's why Benedict had to keep still trying to go after Jack Slater. Even though Benedict could have just disappeared into the wind and gone wherever he wanted, he still had to try to kill Jack Slater because that's who he is as a person.
Hmm.
And I found that fascinating.
It was the link that they had before they went to the real world, and it
Right.
continues into the real world. So that's
But what
where,
I love is that's why I want to spend more time in the real world, just because I want to see one of them try to escape this link, but they can't, because no matter, like, they might try to get on a train to try to go somewhere else, but they can't do it because they keep getting pulled back to this other human being.
yeah,
And
that would be
that's what I want to play with.
an interesting string to continuously pull, because you can see, I don't know who you would suggest to be the new the villain, but you would be able to have the scene where he's becoming more and more humanized in terms of reality rules, and then there's this string that's being pulled back to where the plot of the movie is that he has to kill Jack Slater.
Yeah, it's his driving force, or with my recasting, her driving force, but nonetheless.
No.
Yes.
Who do you have in mind?
We'll get there. We'll get there. So, but in terms of like plot, that's what I think is more important. I think for something like this, and especially in a world where we're kind of familiar with and used to playing around with some of the metatextualness of these sorts of characters, that's what I think we need to spend more time in. I don't want to just get to the real world in like the second half of our act 3. I want it to be like middle of the movie on, like half of the movie in the movie world, half of the movie in the real world.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind him getting into the movie a lot quicker.
Yeah,
And
I don't need some guy to show up at their house to rob him and then he goes to a real police station. That's ridiculous.
but I do appreciate that. I I, the, I think there should be almost like two sets of comedy. Like in the movie world, they should keep with that like Naked Gun um, style of comedy, and also they inspired from like the Holy Grail, like that type of
Monty
comedy.
Python?
Yeah, the Monty
I
Python style
I mean,
comedy.
I'll give
And
it to
then
you
when they
that
go into the real world, it should be kind of pivoted into they want to continue saying these, and then someone's like, why are you trying to break the third wall here? Like you're just looking at it, you're just looking out the window. Like I want them to be like another style of comedy, and then there has to be more of a this is a movie world where you have sound effects, and like this is the real world where there is no soundtrack. There's nobody there that you pan to. Like, what are you doing?
I mean,
Why?
I'm cool with that. Like he goes to give the camera a look, and then we cut away, and he's just like leering at a wall.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. That's funny for me. Okay. So we kind of have a sense of what we want to do for the movie itself, and we kind of have a sense of like the tone and what we want our characters to deal with. So okay, so now I'm comfortable. Let's start talking about casting. Obviously, Jack Slater needs to be The Rock, but who did you have for the kid?
That's a great question, and I would do Tom Holland.
Tom Holland's in his 20s.
Spider-Man. I think the kid has to be older. He doesn't have to be
I
this like 13-year-old kid. I
I
think he
I
has to be older.
disagree. I don't, because at that point we're doing a different kind of movie. At that point we're doing like, I don't know. It's not. I think you need kind of like the childlike wonder of believing in all of this. I don't necessarily want him taking along a teenager. I want it to be a legitimate child, because like all of a sudden in a movie world it's like they got to take this kid with me, but in the real world like this kid's in danger, and a kid without friends is such a more like relatable thing, and it's such a good pull for emotional stakes that I feel like that just works better. Whereas if it's a teenager, it's a depressing movie, and it's like a teenager's like, oh, I don't care about anything. Why am I even going to the movies? And I feel like a kid is going to be that person who just loves them. So I picked a kid who is just so good at like going along, who's just, you watch him and you're just like, oh my god, this kid's enthusiasm could power a city. And that kid's name is Archie Yates. Archie Yates is the best friend kid from Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, the little. Okay.
So,
He's adorable, first of
yes.
all. I that would be You're right.
So
And with
that's
that
why I think we
Archie
have to go with Archie Yates.
with the Archie Yates actor, he it would just be like uh, it would be a lot of the comedy would just be looking at him, because when he did Jojo Rabbit, it was just the ridiculousness of whatever he's doing with his acting that is just like so confident. It would be ridiculously contrasting to The Rock, which would be interesting to look at.
Yep, Archie Yates it is. So that brings me to the mom. Who did you write down ahead of time for the mom?
The mom would be an
Did you write it?
interesting.
Did you
The
write anyone down for the mom?
I would. I wasn't thinking about the mom at all, because I was
Oh, okay.
thinking that she was such an insignificant character. It's more the dad that's not there, more present than the mom that is there.
I strongly disagree. And
Really?
part of the reason why I disagree is because it's so much establishing for the characters that it's like this kid with a single mom. The dad's not in the picture, which is why this kid idolizes the big action heroes. So that's why he's interested in the Jack Slater. But this poor mom, you can see she just cares about her kid, and she's doing everything she can to provide for them, but she's also his anchor in the real world. And when Jack Slater first comes to the real world, she's this first real, actual human being that Arnold Schwarzenegger is able to interact with. And he's just mesmerized by her because she's amazing and she's real, and she's literally unlike any other human being he's ever met before. And I love the idea that no matter what happens, you can always go, like, for a kid, you always can just go home to your mom and be like, that's the place where you feel safe. So of course that's the first place he takes Jack Slater.
It's very
And
poetic.
and I feel like you need
I
that.
I didn't put the value of that in the mom character at all. So, who did you have in mind?
So with that in mind, I cast someone who can play very sweet, but I also cast someone who has a history of playing really weird comedy bits. Like if you end up looking her up, some of the roles she's had have the weirdest shit, like names. This is a woman, and I'm gonna pronounce her last name wrong. I think it's Carla Gallo. It's Gallo, but it might be Carla Gallo. She's been in Future Man. She's been in Bones. She's been kind of like a staple of comedy for a little while, but she kind of always gets these like weird comedic things just because I think she's willing to do that. And I feel like in this movie, she kind of can have that little bit of a comedic edge while still being like an earnest, good actress, which I do believe she is.
Hmm. She does look like a mom. She
Yeah,
looks
she's
like a
like,
tiger mom, actually. So that seems like the maybe a type of character that she could play, where she has this very serious face, and
but yeah, so that's the idea. Someone who can, like, kind of has like the young mom energy. Someone who's trying so hard, but this kid just isn't old enough to understand that or appreciate that yet.
you would keep the same career. I think the mom in the movie was a nurse.
I mean, we need nurses now more than ever.
That's very valid. It's very valid. It's very interesting that we're doing this podcast while this is happening.
Yeah, it's our remote session, our social distancing recording. The top of my notes pages always say take a selfie because I always forget to take a selfie because, like, promotional purposes. Hey, thank you this person for being in the podcast. But like I can't take a selfie if we're not in the same room.
We gotta figure something out. We'll figure something out.
We'll figure it out. So
Um,
that brings me to the movie theater guy, Nick.
okay, so the mom, I really, it does, to me, it doesn't matter who's the actress. I really don't value her as much as you, but I can see the point that she could be of value. Now, we're talking about this guy who started working at the movie when he was a kid. He worked his way from a ticket stub handler to the projectionist, and his name is Frank. And Frank is a very important character in the movie
Is it
because
Frank or is it
he's the
Nick?
one. I think it's
I might have.
uh,
I pulled. I may have pulled the wrong name, but it's the movie theater guy.
yes, I think you're actually right. Frank was the supervillain. Nick was the projectionist. So you're right. It is Nick, played by Robert Prosky, and and he's actually a really important part because he's the whole magic behind the the process of getting from reality into the movie. And what did you think about his background story?
Oh my
It
god,
was
his
just a
life is a
simple sentence.
tragedy.
Yeah.
Ah, I felt so bad for him. He's like, well, I've literally had this magic thing my entire life, but I've been scared to use it. And so, like, I'll give it to you. And the kid obviously uses it immediately. And it's just like, A, this guy's clearly nuts. And so, like, my friend and I were like, oh no, this kid should not be anywhere near this guy. Oh no. But, like, oh, it's so sad.
I felt like they just used Houdini. Houdini is a magician. He does magic, and he's just the source of this. How do you feel about using Houdini as the source?
I mean, I'm okay with using Houdini because, like, all that really matters is that, like, it's magic, it's real, and he's held on to it for 50 years and never used it. Like, Houdini is the source, that's fine. I feel like we might now be at a point where that's a little bit too old, even. Like, I don't think someone right now could be alive who, like, met Houdini when they were that young, but I don't know. Like, it could just as easily be like yeah, I got it from, who are the lion dudes?
The lion dudes.
One of them was mauled by a lion. um, Siegfried and Roy.
Oh, okay. Oh
Just
man.
like well known enough magic figures where it's like this person had no reason to believe it would be real, and then it is real, and they're like, oh no, I wasted my whole life by not using the magic that was here all along.
Yeah, I think that's just so freaking sad. Where he's like, shit, I had like a golden lottery ticket and I never cashed it. and now I'm old. But then there was this one scene where he's like, I can still use this. I can still go back and see. And then he names a classic movie with an actress that he likes. And he was still stoked, even though he immediately realized that his life could have been completely altered if he'd been more courageous and less scared to take risks and rip a ticket. But like in all fairness, it's like if you were to get a baseball signed by Babe Ruth and you're scared to go outside and play ball with it because you watched The Sandlot, you know? So it's more like, yeah, I'm just gonna keep this at home. Like
I mean,
I'm not gonna play baseball with this ball on the off chance that Babe Ruth is gonna start talking to me.
I feel like those are different equivalences. Like the kid in Sandlot should not have taken the Babe Ruth ball.
Well, it wasn't his ball, so
I know, but even still,
that's a no. But
yeah,
it's
that was messed up.
this is his dad's ball, and his dad chose to do what the
stepdad's
theater
ball.
person, yeah, did, which was like, I'm just gonna, you look at it as a trophy. It's amazing, like which most people would do. Like this is awesome.
Yes. I guess. Either way, who do you have for this character?
It has to be an older character. I mean, ideal Anthony Hopkins.
This was one of the characters that I intentionally tried to find someone who'd been in stuff but wouldn't himself be recognizable. Because if this is a movie about like literally like the A-listers and all the super famous people, you can't put a super famous person in like any other role.
What about that guy that was in the Hunger Games and he was also in Westworld? His what's his name? He's a great actor. He played in the later Hunger Games movies as
Are you looking for
the
Stanley
tech guy.
Tucci? The tech guy.
Jeffrey Wright. He played Beetee in the Hunger Games.
Oh, Jeffrey Wright. Yeah, I mean, the problem is that Jeffrey Wright is himself incredibly recognizable right now. Like, he is, or was one of the main characters in Westworld.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what everyone seems to know him from now.
Yes, but I love him as an actor.
Where is the name of the movie?
He has this, like a stereotype of like a knowledgeable guy. So, this role is kind of just like kind of like this guy who's nice to a kid. It doesn't really take much, so it's almost like a cameo. You're just there to be like, listen, kid, like here's a ticket. You can come back and watch this movie with me. It's a little bit creepy, so like he has to be this almost like innocent looking character. He almost has to be familiar.
I still maintain that I feel like it shouldn't be someone we immediately recognize, because if it's going to be someone and then we're in a crowd of celebrities being like, you're in the movie and you're in the movie, it's like we're already speaking the language of recognition. So the actor I went with is someone who was in a lot of really big movies and kind of his time has passed, which is why I thought he would be good for this role. It's an actor named Burt Young. So Burt Young was in movies like Rocky. He was in Chinatown. And he'll still do like bit parts in things like Russian Doll. But he's a man in, I want to say his 80s. And who just kind of has like I could see him kind of sitting and being this old school. Oh, I'm sorry. He's 79. I apologize. He'll be 80 on April 30th.
Yeah, he's not 80 yet, Sam.
I'm being rude. And I could definitely see him being this person who sits in the projectionist booth at a movie theater being like, I know this job's usually done by 16-year-olds now, but like it's the only job I really feel good about. It's the only job I've ever really had. And the movie theater just feels bad about firing me.
He looks like an average Joe character, like that he plays just the guy who's just there and he's happy to be there.
Exactly. But yeah, so like that sort of person. Like I'm happy to go with Jeffrey Wright for now for this character, but like in practice, like that's sort of the person I had in mind.
Okay. So let's move forward.
So then that brings us to John Practice, who is Jack Slater's friend, who the kid references as the guy who played Amadeus in didn't play Amadeus, who played Salieri in Amadeus. And the kid's like, you can't trust him, he plays villains. And so clearly he's going to be the one that betrays you. And of course later he betrays him. So I wanted someone who traditionally has that same sort of role. And I wanted someone who has already kind of been parodied as like, well, he's always the villain guy, so what do you expect? So that's why I went with Ben Mendelsohn. Ben Mendelsohn has a long and storied tradition and past of playing villains and bad guys in the movies that he's in.
Yes, he has that bad guy, like resting bitch face, like serious.
Resting bad guy face?
Mm-hmm.
Resting villain face.
Mm-hmm. Like he's always up to something.
Yeah, and that's why, like, in Captain Marvel, it's so great when it's like, no, you guys are jumping to a lot of conclusions right now. But, like, if you just want to lean into the Ben Mendelsohn of it all, like, he could ham it up so much, because he's a legitimately funny dude. And that's why I'm like, oh, that's what it's gotta be.
I can see, like, him in the style of Ready Player One, this...
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly
okay.
that.
I'm fine with that. He definitely has the background to be that character, and he definitely has this kind of the villainy that would be the backstabber at the end. That would just be like, well, we told you.
Yeah. Cool. Then let's talk about Vivaldi, the mob boss. Who did you have for that?
I really didn't like the character that they used, because he was just, I didn't relate with him. He didn't even seem like a good bad guy, and I would use my favorite bad guy, Al Pacino.
You want to make it Al Pacino?
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm. He would be.
That would be funny.
He would be the guy, and then this whole point of this movie is that you're using references of other action movies. So like that just opens up this window, this door of quotes of this guy's life, So I think that's where a lot of the comedy can come in, and then and I think he would be great. I mean, he's immediately recognizable. And
if you want to cast someone to play a mob boss, why not cast the most famous mob boss of all time?
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. My casting was a guy who's been in The Sopranos. He's been in Transparent. I cast Ray Abruzzo, but I feel like Al Pacino's probably the better choice for this role. So I'm good with that. But that brings us to Benedict, to the Charles Dance character.
That's gonna be tough.
Who do you have for this?
I wouldn't change.
Oh, okay. So what I thought was necessary about this person is I wanted that person who's like kind of been handicapped their whole life. Like they know they're a bad guy,
mm-hmm.
but like they haven't been able to like really live up to their whole bad guy potential. And
because of their handicap?
No.
No,
not because of the handicap.
Because in the movie, like he was Charles Dance was handicapped, but like not really handicapped. Like I guess it was. But
that's not what I meant. I meant handicapped as like a character, because he's like, well, bad guys always lose, but it's like one of those things that you don't realize you're wearing weights until
mm-hmm.
you take the weights off, and you're like, you can really cut loose. It's like I can't think of a good example, but basically, like, if you do weight training and then all of a sudden, like, you take those weights off.
Like Goku.
Like, yeah, basically. And all of a sudden you're, like, jumping around and free and able to do all this stuff. So I wanted someone who kind of, like, would be living under that kind of rock, and then just like, oh my god, now I can really be evil. And I also wanted to go someone who's kind of, like, on the rise, which is why I wanted to go with someone who is literally about to be playing someone really, really, really cool and intimidating, but hasn't necessarily had all those roles leading up to it. Like, she's been in cool stuff before, but hasn't necessarily been... Yeah. But they haven't been
mm-hmm.
in, like, haven't necessarily been in English. So I wanted to go with, and I'm going to make sure I pronounce this right. One moment, please. I went with the Spanish actress Ursula Corbero.
Okay.
Who, if you want to look her up right now, she totally gives off villain vibes.
How do you spell her last name?
Corbero.
Ah, she does have. What has she been in?
So she's been in a couple of different things. Like, she's been in a lot of Spanish movies, but the thing that's coming up that's going to be like her big breakout role is the G.I. Joe spin-off movie, Snake Eyes. Mm-hmm. She's going to be playing the Baroness. So she's literally about to play the big bad villain in a big blockbuster action movie. And so she's about to explode, and that's why I wanted to, like, get it on the ground floor of, like, we don't quite know who she is yet, but just like Charles Dance, everyone is about to know who this person is.
Wow, that's really... It's very brave of you. Because See, I wouldn't change Charles Dance just because... out of respect for that actor.
I mean,
he's
I love Charles
incredible.
Dance, but it's a different world, and like Charles Dance would be a better option for like Vivaldi. But I feel like I love the idea of Ursula Corbero suddenly realizing that she doesn't just have to be a lackey anymore, and then she just straight up kills Al Pacino. It would be so dark and amazing and just freaking brutal. I want that. Like, yeah. I'd love it if she's been capped at PG-13 her whole life, and then all of a sudden she steps into a world where she can behave at like R-rated level, and she's like, oh my god, yes.
Yeah, I think any actor would love the opportunity to play this role, just because you're kind of like the transition that this actor goes through. You know, first you get to be a villain, then you get to be like a villain that wins. Like, first you get to, it's like you get this whole career within one movie. You get to be this villain that loses, and then you get to be that villain that wins. You're like, yeah, it's amazing. Oh, that would be interesting to see.
Yeah, so let's go with Ursula for this one.
I've never seen her any roles of hers, so I think I would have to see how she does in that upcoming G.I. Joe movie.
If she's already the Baroness, she's gonna be great. Like, she's got the accent, she's got the whole thing. I believe in her. I think it's gonna be great. Plus, I want British accent's been overdone. Now the true villains are Spaniards.
I mean, they always been. Oh man, people forget how much the Spaniards conquered.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Okay, so let's move on to Decker, because he is the guy with the big mouth. Like, he is the one who's going to be yelling at The Rock, and The Rock, as you may know, he's very quick. He's very whippy. So this guy is going to have to be on that level to, you know, get them, receive them, and keep topping the Rock. So this guy has to be very vocal, very out there, and I do have a guy in mind.
Tell me.
You ready for this?
I am.
Terry Crews.
Yeah, I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Crews is very good at being loud and vocal and portraying a police sergeant.
And taking up
years of experience.
A lot of space.
That's true. He's he would be very good and would definitely be able to like give The Rock a run for his money in terms of like could actually stand up to him sort of
yes. Thing. And this is an important core of this film, where you have Decker, which is the sergeant of this police department, which we didn't even talk about how zany this police department is. Because
I want to leave it as a surprise for anyone who watches this movie. Like you know, you're in for an amazing treat once you get to the police department scene. Like, oh my god, it's amazing.
So if
Danny DeVito kills it, let's just say.
So if there was something that would be, a spin, and in the new remake, it would be if it was the same exact way that they did in the movie prior, or if they adjusted it and we tweaked it to just be like The Rock is in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and then he just walks into their station. But now Decker is was in the show. He's actually named Terry. They did that to like make him feel bad if he doesn't take the role. So he took the role, but Terry is now the captain or the sergeant. I don't know which one is higher ranking. And then
Captain is higher ranking.
He's the captain of that division, and then instead of having the police office be as zany as it is in the original movie, it just becomes like the set of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Terry is the captain, and The Rock is just one of their new agents.
I mean,
But
it would be
having
funny if he stepped onto another set. Although at
yeah,
that point, I think we'd all be disappointed that he's not taking his orders from Andre Braugher.
yeah, I mean Andre Braugher would be great, but I think it would be
It's a
even
different kind of
funnier.
energy.
It would be even funnier just to walk in and you have Andy Samberg, the whole set be there, but like it's a different movie. Like it's like they're totally referencing Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but it's like, it's within our movie.
uh, you do the Deadpool 2 thing where they go to the X mansion,
Hmm.
and it is just, man, I sure feel like we should be able to afford more X-Men, right? And they're just like not there.
Exactly. So plays a little bit on that humor of like they're so like they don't they're so the writers are so lazy that they just take the cast and the setting of another show and just use it for this movie.
I'm not opposed to that. So I kind of went with someone who would be able to kind of give off the same energy as the original Decker, the Decker that like we have now,
Played by
who's kind of
Frank
like,
McRear. He was great.
yeah, who he is great. He gives off this. He's also very large and in charge, and like he's this guy who theoretically shouldn't be able. That Slater both doesn't take seriously, but does take seriously, and then the kid's like, "Yeah, no, you said in this other time that you were each other's best friends, and you really do care about each other." And I just loved that, and so that's kind of why I wanted to go with someone who wouldn't necessarily be like seen as an equal to Rock, but like someone who would be equal in a different way. And I went with Gaborni Sidibe,
Hmm.
the woman who was in Precious. She's also been in Empire and Seven Psychopaths and Difficult People. Someone who is herself recognizable, but like you also like she also like when she was on SNL. Oh my god, she's really funny, and like anytime I get to see her in something that's comedy related, it's amazing. Just the opportunity to get to see her like really cut loose and just like to see her just lay into The Rock would delight me.
I think that would be interesting to see for sure.
But yeah, I'm happy to go with Terry Crews if that's what you prefer. But that's who I had.
Okay. Shall we move on to the Ripper?
I actually did not cast the Ripper. Tell me who you
Okay.
had for the Ripper.
Are you ready for this?
Go for it.
Dexter.
It's a little on the nose, don't you think?
Exacto.
I mean, part of what makes what I found to be interesting about the Ripper is that it wasn't an actor I recognized,
Hmm.
and it's someone who like when you like because you actually go to the premiere of the movie and they show the actors like, and here's the guy who played the Ripper, and then the Ripper comes in and basically like kills the actor who plays him, and it's delightful. I mean, I don't have someone for the Ripper, so we have to go with.
So the actor's name is Michael C. Hall.
Yeah.
He
So,
plays.
like I said, I don't have someone for this, so we have to go with Michael C. Hall. That's the rule.
Well,
Uh,
well, let me introduce you the second option because there is a second option. At first, I
okay.
thought about Michael C. Hall just because obvious his role in Dexter, he's able to play, which we need him to play the actor and play this Ripper villain. So he can all we can just adjust this Ripper to be more of a serial killer guy in plain clothing, so he doesn't have to be this cinematic like Frankenstein
Oh,
type
no,
of
no, no. He
character.
absolutely has to be that. Like, that's what really sells it, is when he looks so different from the actor who's actually portraying him. I
Yeah,
don't want him to be recognizable. I'm happy to go with, like, Michael C. Hall, but he's got to be definitely, like movie one, clearly a crazy-ass villain.
yeah, but can't you see him in his Dexter like clear protective suit, and there's just blood all over him, and he's just wearing, you know,
I can, but the problem is we know we don't need that kind of villain. We already have that kind of villain with Vivaldi and Benedict. They're already playing the type of villain who's like the straight-laced, put together, but definitely evil villain. The point of the Ripper is to play a different kind of villain where they're just balls to the wall, insane person. If we have someone else who's just in a suit, we're literally hitting the same notes over and over again. We need to have a type of villain who's wildly different, because it gives our characters something else, a different way to respond.
but he would only be in a suit like when he's playing himself as an actor. When he's doing the Ripper scene, he would be in his like all out, I just killed somebody Dexter mode. Or for the second option, a cast from Game of Thrones who played Sandor Clegane,
Oh,
and he was phenomenal.
I love that. That's a great choice, because he definitely, like, just full on. The actor's name is Rory McCann.
Right.
Rory McCann would be, I think, amazing, because you cover him up in, like, different prosthetics, obviously, but I think Rory McCann is an excellent choice, because he's big, but also, like, when, like, outside of prosthetics, he's still, like, a reasonably good looking dude, and you just yeah, I think that's absolutely the one to go with.
The only thing that would be kind of on the same lane is that he played the villain in Jumanji, so he's already kind of facing off with The Rock in a different movie in a similar way. But
I'm kind of okay with that. I kind of like it, because that gives them something else to make fun of within the world of the movie.
that's a good point. So it is in lane with the humor of this movie. Okay, so I think that you're right. That could be a better choice.
Cool. Let's go with Rory McCann for the Ripper. I love that. So for Death, I actually did cast Ian McKellen again. A, because it kind of looks the same, and because it's Death. It's the same Death. Death is the same. Death is permanent.
Mm-hmm.
And so the only allusion to the original movie I had was that Death is Death. And I thought Ian McKellen would still work. I don't know if you had anyone else in that role.
He was another one of those just perfectly cast people.
So yeah, so let's go with Ian McKellen. And then the only other role that I had is the daughter. But the thing about the daughter is, as that character is written, the kid literally says, this is her first movie. So the daughter, we cannot cast, because we would have to go through the process of casting someone who is brand new. This would need to be their first movie. And so that's why I thought for the daughter, we can't. We simply cannot. That's what casting is for. Scripturally, it must be a brand new human being.
It has to be somebody that kind of played the Emma character, in the new film, where she was also in the New Mutants. So she can be both this innocent character and this like super, but other than that, it's like it just has to be somebody completely new that could do that versatility. I see what you mean though.
Yeah. So yeah, has to be a newcomer, but other than that, I just have writer and director. So, who did you have writing this movie? Did you have someone writing this movie? Like, is that something you planned for?
No, I have no idea. Who did you have in mind?
Our writer, I wanted someone who could handle the action, but also handle the comedy, and kind of has a sense of kind of this meta-textual comedic world. So he's doing the action because he was the writer for this new Wonder Woman 1984, but he also is the writer for both Zombieland 1 and Zombieland 2.
Both great written movies, that's true.
But what really sold me on needing this writer is that he's the writer behind Jean-Claude Van Johnson. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my god, he gets it. Someone who's already taking kind of this action star and like doing the craziness for them. And that writer's name is Dave Callahan. And that's why he's like the perfect person for this. Action comedy. He's got it. He like this is his deal. Like if anything has been inspired by the original Last Action Hero, it's stuff like Zombieland and Jean-Claude Van Johnson.
That's so true. That's awesome. That's a very good pick.
And then for director, I went with the guy who directed Jumanji and Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle, because you and I both agree it has to be The Rock. So it has to be someone who's already familiar with pulling the best comedy beats out of The Rock, but who even himself is familiar with directing kind of like parodies and spoofs and that sort of thing, because he also was the director for Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, which is an amazing movie, and I love that movie. And so the director for those things is Jake Kasdan, who I think is actually Lawrence Kasdan's son, which I should verify that before putting that out into the world. But that's who was like, so like you have this combination of Dave Callahan and Jake Kasdan. They're going to give us an amazing movie.
And he did a lot of, he's credited for 22 producer credits as well. He did Bad Teacher 2. He did most recently Fresh Off the Boat. It was like TV series. He could definitely produce something that would be along part what we're looking at in terms of vision for this film.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so that's the idea, and that's our cast for the lastest action hero, the even more last action hero. So let me take you through our cast. We have Jack Slater being played by the only person who can, The Rock. Danny, the kid, will be played by Archie Yates. His mom will be Carla Gallo. It'll be played by Carla. Nick, the movie theater guy, will be Jeffrey Wright. John Practice, the friend who betrays him, will be Ben Mendelsohn. Vivaldi, the mob boss, will be the ultimate mob boss, Al Pacino. Benedict will be Ursula Corbero. Decker will be Terry Crews. The Ripper will be Rory McCann. Death will be Ian McKellen. The daughter, we don't know. It'll be someone we find because it must be her first movie. The writer will be Dave Callahan, and the director will be Jake Kasdan. That is Laster Action Hero. Daniel, you gonna go see this movie?
With that cast and that director, you gotta just think about it. He did Freaks and Geeks. So this guy is known to produce just amazing work that create cult following. I wouldn't miss this movie.
Cool, love it. All right, great. Thank you very much for bringing this movie to my attention, because I don't know if I said this. I loved this movie. This movie is amazing, and everyone should watch it because it's fantastic, especially because we're stuck inside and have nothing else to do. So, Daniel, you told us a little bit about this before, but go ahead and plug everything you want to plug. Tell us again about your Instagram. Tell us anything you want people who are listening right now to do and follow.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for having me on. I wholeheartedly recommend watching Last Action Hero. You will get like everything you need to get from an action film and a comedy, and you will understand just like what it takes to make a really great movie. And it's very surprising that it didn't do well at the box office, but it's not surprising at all that it became a very cult favorite. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Dog Dads. You can DM me pictures of you with your dog, and I love getting those. Thanks for listening. That's all I have to say.
Cool. If you're interested in following me, I am at Sam Gasch, SamGasch on Twitter. Or if you want to follow the podcast, it is at Ideal Remake on both Twitter and Instagram, but mostly Instagram. Or you can follow us on Facebook. Just join us at Ideal Remake or Ideal Remake Podcast. And if you've got time while under lockdown, although this episode comes out in, about a month actually. This episode will be coming out late April, so hopefully we're not still under lockdown, but it could happen. But either way, use that time wisely to go and rate this podcast 5 stars and give us a lovely review, because I would love you for it. And yeah, that's Laster Action Hero. Daniel, I will end with this. What is your favorite quote from Last Action Hero?
I'll be back.